Now, welcome everybody. Hope you're tuned into the right session. It's navigating recruitment in the AI age with Starfish. Um, my name's Steve Davis. I'm a PPMA board member. I'm a past president. In my professional job, I'm an HR director at London Councils. Um, but let me introduce my colleagues that are going to be taking you through this session today. So, Sunita Patel from Starfish, she's sort of very futuristic sounding agencies, and it's Starfish, and they're very good at recruitment as well. Yeah, so Sunita's going to be zooming around, and we've got Jason. He's the main man today, Jason Makepeace, and he's got a couple of friends with him in the background. I don't know if you can see he's got a lovely octopus, and he's got a fantastic flamingo lamp as well. So it's like Jason and friends, and he'll be taking us through this session. So without further ado, I will hand you over to them. They're going to break up the session a little bit for some discursive chat at different points during the presentation. And anybody that wants to put any comments or questions in, can you please use the chat to do that rather than look to interrupt to begin with? But we will have opportunities during the course of the presentation to have some discussion about the issues. So hand over to you, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks
Oh,
so much,
I'll
Steve.
go first.
I'm going to
That's
go. Yeah, I
okay.
was going to say, you go first, definitely.
Well, thank you, Steve. And it's so nice to see so many of you here. I'm Sunita Patel. I'm a principal consultant at Starfish Search. Many of you will probably already know us. We lead executive search campaigns across local government and civil society. And we're really pleased to be hosting this session today with Jason Makepeace from GovCats. It's increasingly clear to us at Starfish that we need to invest time in exploring the issues around AI in the competitive process. Everyday AI use is still in its infancy, and I know that lots of us are probably still burying our heads in the sand about its role and its impact. But there's no doubt that its use is growing, and as recruiters, we're experiencing that every day in how candidates are presenting themselves. So AI isn't going away, and we need to ensure that we navigate through this calmly. So I'm really delighted to introduce Jason Makepeace, who has impressed us all at Starfish. And he talks really well about removing the fear factor from AI and can share some of his experiences in this space too. So over to you, Jason.
That is a very kind introduction, Sunita. Thank you. I'm going to put some slides on screen, but while I'm doing that, please do introduce yourselves to each other and all of us in chat. So who you are, where you come from, why you're here, what you're interested in, all those sorts of things. I hear that sometimes these sessions can be a little bit dry, perhaps, in that they might be sort of an hour of talking and then you will go home. But we're not going to do that today. And if we do that, start throwing things at the screen because that would be boring. What I'd like to do is to split it into two kind of mini discussions. One about recruitment, particularly, and thinking about stuff through the recruiter's eye, the recruitee's eyes, the recruit's eyes, is that a thing? And one about you as the people who are leading the industry. And I'm very, very lucky that I've been involved in various different things in civil service and the NHS and the rest around the public sector, helped hire teams and also be hired by other people. And I know that you have a huge and challenging job on your hands to maintain the values and the responsibilities of your organizations, and also to navigate the challenges of equitable and inclusive recruitment at the moment. And I think you're brilliant people. So do introduce yourselves to each other in chat. Don't hold back. Don't be shy. I can see the chat too, so I can wave at any of you that are looking a little bit shy too. Fine. So can everyone see slides? Does that work for everyone? Has anyone got any problems? Stick your hand out if anyone got problems. Good. Thanks, Stephanie, for being the first person to introduce yourself. You get a point. So I'm Jason. As Steve mentioned, I run a little agency called GovCats, which is mostly about getting brilliant senior leaders in government to do more senior leadership-y things in government around transformation and change and getting programs back on track and that sort of thing. I've also had the privilege over the last couple of years of being one of the people leading the NHS test and trace program around COVID-19. If anyone remembers those horrible, horrible times, and particularly things like having to use that little app to make sure you hadn't crashed into somebody who had COVID and then being pinged about it, I'm really sorry. That was my fault and my team's fault. We're all really sorry about that, but we did keep you all safe, so it was kind of vaguely worth it. And I've done lots of stuff in government around kind of bringing brains and minds from diverse parts of academia, industry, and the rest of the world together, and that's definitely involved bringing AI to the table over the last couple of years. We've worked with some really amazing organisations like Faculty and Ginkgo to work on the National Biosurveillance Network, which thinks about how we get ahead of the next pandemic and don't let it take us all back to those horrible days of COVID-19. So we can talk about any of those things during the break, but I would like to split it into two discussions that I've talked about. So discussion one is going to be about you, your candidates, and AI. I'm trying to talk for about 10 minutes, no more, because otherwise you'll get bored. And then I will open it up and hopefully we can have a good discussion. Don't be shy. Chatham House rules. No one's going to come complaining at you afterwards. And if they do, go to Steve and tell them off, because that would be outrageous. So I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about cheating, what about the approaches that we all have and the tone that we use. And I want to talk about leveling the playing field. And we did promise that we would bring some disaster stories. So I'm going to bring one particularly from my own experience and a couple of examples as well from others as well, so that you can all laugh a little bit at the end, because this is a bit of a scary little landscape. So this is the most scary thing, right? You're applying for a job. We've all been here. You've got a blank Google Doc or Word document in front of you, and you've got to write a cover letter. And there is nothing more scary than a blank document. And if there is, then please put it in chat, and then we'll all agree that that's actually more scary than a blank document when you need to apply for a job. Over the years, people have used a lot of different things in this, to help you start that document off. There's amazing books. I remember when I applied for my first job, I went to WH Smith and I bought a book that said how to write a cover letter, and I read it and it was awful. And then I wrote an awful cover letter and I didn't get a lot of jobs. And then after a while, we got Clippy. And Clippy was the worst invention in the whole world, and it was very embarrassing. And then we got Google, and still, if you just Google how to, and you start writing that, then it's obviously still the thing that people most need help with in their world, apart from how to write a check, which is amazingly retro. And now, obviously, we have a thing which can not only give you all some guidance, but actually start writing the letter for you. And so in that sense, there's a real opportunity for AI to help people who are really fearful about this world, and that definitely includes me and many others, to start navigating it successfully. I asked ChatGPT yesterday to help me write a cover letter for a roulette dealer without giving any information about myself, and it obviously just went straight off and collected some words. It's always worth remembering that AI is not actually clever. It's just really good at guessing what the next word in the sentence might be based on increasingly large amounts of information. And for me, I think if I was applying for a job today, then I would automatically ask ChatGPT to help me with a structure and some outlines and some recommendations on how to do it in exactly the same way I might have read a book or Googled about that in the past. But I would do that with the additional value of it knowing what my CV looked like, and also potentially what the job specification was, so that some of those fear factors around what are they looking for from this job, what are the person specifications they're looking for, what are the things that I need to draw out, get me over that first hurdle. And I would imagine that's the case for a lot of other people. There's a question about whether that's cheating. And I think there's only cheating in that if there are reasons, if there are two things that aren't held in tension. One of those is, what's the recruiter's attitude to me doing that? Do they expect that to be cheating? So are they a person who thinks that getting help in writing a cover letter from a computer which doesn't know anything and is gamed to win the system is unfair? And also if that recruiter isn't considering the equitable implications of that. So I guess that's the second part of this question around how does AI influence the mind of a recruiter, a recruitee to a role. And the thing that I'd love to bring you to is a thing called the Pessimist's Archive. Can I have a quick hands up? Has anyone heard of the Pessimist's Archive before? Is anyone a subscriber to their amazing emails? Okay, pessimistsarchive.org, definitely worth a Friday afternoon read. You'll love this. This is a place which has started collecting news clippings from the ancient and recent past on things what were awful. For instance, what was this one? Television. Television is awful. Television should never have been invented. So we had from the 50s onwards, what is this television? It's ruining our children's lives. We all know this one very well. Like, you're going to get square eyes. You're not zoning out. Murders happen because people have watched them on television. It's awful. TV is clearly terrible. And obviously what we know is that since the 1950s, people have been watching television, and it may well have impacted society in good ways and bad ways, but what hasn't happened is the end of humanity. And similarly, radio before that, women in England fear radio face. I don't even know what radio face is. If anyone's a woman on this call and has radio face and would like to dial in and tell us, that would be really useful. Jazz is obviously evil. Church is going to get killed off by radio. Like, we are very good as humans as fear mongering. And I think one of the things that we fear about AI is it's a new thing. It's a new technology. We don't really understand it. We don't understand how it's going to impact us. And therefore, obviously, we can get quite scared of it. And, it goes further back. Books are bad. Don't read books. Definitely don't read them in bed. It's awful. So the way this manifests in AI, I think in our sector, in the public sector particularly, is that we aren't quite sure how to approach it yet. We aren't quite sure how to guide people how to use it yet. And I did a little bit of a sift of some roles on civil service jobs over the last few days, just to see how different departments are approaching the question of how to encourage or discourage people to use AI during their applications. And clearly, as a civil service HR profession, there has been some learning and some teaching over this for the last few weeks, because when I first looked at this a few weeks back, there was quite a lot of please don't use AI. And actually what's really interesting now is even over the last few weeks, especially as you've got things like the AI team moving into Department of Science and Innovation and Technology, where they're kind of taking that responsible leadership role across government, that tone has started to shift. But there's still no standard language. There's still no way that you as HR professionals and hiring managers and teams are really approaching it. And I think it's really interesting comparing and contrasting the way that some people that we're talking about AI during that application process and how we're grappling with how it changes the things that we're seeing. And there's something that I'd love to come back to in the discussion, is how you are seeing this in the way people are showing up in their recruitment. So on one end of the spectrum, we have this, which is, and all of these departments are going to remain nameless, not least because I don't know if any of you work for any of them, and I don't want to, accidentally drop you in it. We have at one end of the spectrum, we have a quite passive-aggressive statement, which is the beginning of the statement around how you will apply, which says, although the use of AI platforms and tools by candidates is not prohibited, and then it goes on and there's a long sentence about, no, just about how you might use it and craft it to be really careful. But the tone, that opening sentence is quite blunt. It says to a potential candidate, doesn't it? You might not want to use this. And then we've got departments which aren't quite sure how to put this across and are therefore grappling with this by the use of the longest sentences known to humanity. So we've got one on the left, which is, it would be really good if you didn't use it, because we're just going to threaten you with, if you found to be using it and you've used it in the wrong way, then we might fire you because you might have cheated. And that's quite negative. That's not a particularly encouraging way. You've got a really, really long one. I'm going to call this out. It says DWP, but we'll come back to DWP in a minute. Who really, somebody in this team is really, really caring about this, really, really wants to make sure that they don't stop people using tools that can help them. It's Ofgem, isn't it? It's not DWP. We'll come back to DWP in the next DWP are actually excellent. And I've got to take Ofgem out of this. That's very embarrassing. I'll change that for the next version of the slides. Really thinking about it, really careful, but really don't want people to use it. You've then got the next stage along, why has my thing stopped working, which is, we do know you're going to use this. Obviously, you're going to use this. You're human beings. You all know that you need to take the right steps to do the best possible application you can. And DWP have published an entire guide on it, which is really, really good. It's like, actually, it's worth clicking on that link or Googling DWP AI candidate guide, because it is full of really, really good guidance for somebody who doesn't know how to apply for a job or might be a bit nervous about how they might want to use these things. And the one on the left, which is, again, it's the tone of it is more positive. The tone is more constructive and more encouraging. And we know that we're cautious and we don't want you to do the wrong thing. But if you do want to use it the right way. And then you've got, right on the right end of the scale, a department which is blunt, straightforward, really open, really positive, really constructive, isn't going to stop you using anything. And that is 6 separate departments of state, all of whom are on the same journey, all of whom have got the same sort of background and approach and the same values and the same principles of recruitment. And that gamut from we really aren't sure you should be using this all the way through to we really, really welcome this is quite mega. And so as a recruit, I obviously would need to understand the tone, the expectation of the organization that I'm applying to, alongside all the other things that I'm thinking about when I'm applying for a role. And that can be quite big and quite overwhelming. So that's something to consider. And then the third part of this is obviously the inclusivity, diversity, and equity aspect. This is a really big and exciting and very complicated graphic from the wonderful, wonderful Good Things Foundation, who do amazing, amazing work so shout out to any of you that are on the call from there, who do amazing work to kind of bridge the digital divide in the UK and help people who have less access or less confidence gain access to the same equity and capabilities online as others might have. And there's a bit on the left-hand side, which I've drawn a little square around, which is about people left behind. And it looks like this. It says 24% of people who are currently not working lack basic digital skills. And as I'm going through these three statistics, you're going to form some views in your mind, and then I'm going to challenge that. 48% of people without formal qualifications lack digital skills, and 25% of those with a disability or a health condition lack digital skills. And that means that those three groups of people who may be overlapping are significantly disadvantaged in the process of applying for a job. And in some ways, they are probably the people that most benefit from having access to something like an AI tool, which could help them get over that fear of the blank page and help them know how to start a job application. And for all of us in the public sector, those are the people who we most want to help out of distress, out of vulnerability, out of poverty. And there are always ways that we can help those people. While I was putting this together, a friend of mine, a former colleague of mine, reached out to me to say that she was applying for a job and she was struggling with how to write a cover letter. And this is her cover letter spiel. I've pasted it with her permission. So if you know who this is, please don't reach out to her because it would be a bit rude, but recognize that she's an amazing, amazing person. This is a person who falls into one or more of these three boxes. I'll leave you to worry about which. She is not impoverished. She is not over 80. She is not a person who has in any way a fear of technology. This is a person who is incredibly, incredibly capable, senior and experienced in working in very highly specialist roles. And I think you would agree that if you as a recruiter received this paragraph as the opening sentence of a cover letter, you would probably struggle to sift this person in because it's hard to read, it's repetitive, it's not well structured, it's not well formatted, and it doesn't necessarily finish with a full sentence at the end. But because of this person's lived experience and context, this is how they portray themselves and this is how they come across. And so there is no doubt to me, and I haven't done the work on this because I left her to do the work on this because she's perfectly capable of doing this and she's brilliant, that if I was to run that through ChatGPT for her, or she was to run that through ChatGPT, then it would come up with a much clearer, much simpler way of explaining herself to the world. And there is no doubt that she would find it a lot easier to get into a job. And so that equity question is not just about people at the bottom of the scale and the people who are really struggling to get into their first role. It's also about people who are right at the top of that organizational scale too. And there are definitely ways in which equity can impact all of us at all different levels. I won't go through this I'm going to go through this really quickly because I'm already running a little bit over my own ambition of 10 minutes, which is to say that this is worth looking at if you want to. The Government Digital Service just ran a very large 20,000 plus civil servant study survey on using Copilot at work, and the large majority of people who are already in the workplace really enjoyed having something to save them a little bit of time every day. And this is a huge productivity gain for people who have far more important things to do than, like all of us do, write minutes or take notes or summarize a letter. The thing that I find really interesting about this is this group at the bottom, the people who are the specialists in government, tax, legal, science and engineering. There's a little bar down the right. It's quite a hard chart to read, but it says average satisfaction. And although those people used Copilot at work, they didn't enjoy doing it. And they had major problems and concerns about using it, especially in some of their more specialist ways. So again, back to this person who is a highly specialist expert in science and technology, getting over that hurdle of how to use AI well and how to trust AI well is also something that impacts equity of access to jobs and to doing their work well. And we'll finish this little section before I open it up for us to have a little bit of a discussion. So please don't be shy and please do come forward with things. And Stephanie, thank you very much indeed for your first prompt. We might start with that. With a couple of clangers. This one's been circulating on the internet for a while. This is a LinkedIn message from a potential job applicant to a potential job. I hope this message finds you well. It starts off really well. I'm excited to reach out regarding the opportunities you're offering. I believe my skills and experiences align well with your needs. This is where it breaks down, people. When you apply for a job using ChatGPT, don't forget to fill in the blanks. I'm proficient in, mention your key skills, e.g. graphic design, social media, strategy, research, and I'm passionate about, explain briefly how you can add value. My previous experience includes briefly highly relevant experience. So ChatGPT's done the work for them, which is brilliant, but they've accidentally copied and pasted it. We might think this one's a bit silly and a little bit abstract. I'm not going to name the organization that sent me this as a role 2 weeks ago. If any of you recognize this on the call, I apologize for putting this up without your permission. This is a role from an organization which is very highly recognized in our society as being a leader in its field. It's an academic organization because it says the word university halfway down, so you know that it's part of or some part of a university. This is the job description that they sent out via a recruiter for a very senior board level role in change and transformation in their organization. And it is literally copied and pasted from the ChatGPT input that they were given when they said, can you outline what the role of a chief digital information officer is with me? So just in case anyone feels like this is all a bit abstract and none of us are making these errors, we are. And it's okay, because we're all at the first stages of using AI for recruitment or for retention or for any of those sorts of things. And it is totally okay to admit, especially on this call, that we don't know how to use it yet. But it's also incumbent upon us to recognize that people out there in the world are probably going to clock us if we do things like this that are a little bit embarrassing, a little bit wrong. Anyway, so there you go, moving that on. Discussion time. What's changed when we talk about our candidates and our recruitment? Why does that matter to you? And if there are stories that you want to share or concerns that you have or questions that you have and that you want to ask your colleagues on this call, this is a very safe space. No one is going to be held up and told off on this call at all. This is really about us making sure that we look after each other and improve ourselves as an industry and in organizations. So I'm going to start with, unless anyone wants to stick their hand up first, he says, and I'm stalling for time while I give you lots of time for doing this. Let's start with Stephanie's prompt, which is, thank you, Stephanie. Do you want to read it out? Do you want to be the person that kicks off our conversation with us?
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to say, as I said in my comment, I'm repeating myself, but so I do know many people that have neurodiverse or maybe have learning difficulties, and might use ChatGPT or other AI to kind of assist them, as kind of a reasonable adjustment almost, which is really brilliant, I think. So, yeah.
It is. I would agree. Are there others that have come across that in their practice recently? Is there any way that's kind of allowed other people to show up and to be aware and to be visible in ways that they haven't been before?
Just to add, I've recently returned from maternity leave, and I've been getting used to being back at work and having brain fog after not using my brain in the same way for a year. And Chat GPT and Copilot have been really helpful. Like for example, the other day I had to come up with a project plan template and I ran that through Copilot and I didn't use the exact thing it came up with, but it's quite good as giving a kind of starter for 10. Just to like get you going almost.
Yes, definitely starters for 10. Don't accidentally post them back to the colleagues and say, I've done my work. Because as you well know, that won't pass muster. But the starters for 10 thing, the getting off the blank page and the, especially for people who are, as you say, Stephanie, returning to work or trying something else out that's new in their role or stretching themselves a bit, having something that gives you something other than that blank page to begin the conversation with, it's really valuable, isn't it? What are other people finding in their roles? How is AI, if AI has changed any of the recruitment, any of the conversations you've had around retention, any of the insights or the data that you gather, how has that started to show up?
I don't think using sort of AI for applications is a bad thing. And I think sometimes it can tell you a lot about the candidate, particularly using some of the examples you've just given, Jason, you know, depending on their work ethic, if they've got that bit of initiative to go off and look and sort of research further, because it is a start of a 10 ultimately. It's not perfect, it's not foolproof, but it does give you that initiative to go, do you know what do I want to say? Give me some ideas, and then go, oh, that's a good shout. Let's go off and do something else and start that whole process. I also think for some roles, I mean, you did put the Chief Digital Officer sort of role up there. I think that's actually good. There's someone who's going to be in that field talking about sort of AI, digital, etc., is using sort of, you know, those types of tools. But I think certainly for like our team, we've been using it in terms of let's upload a JD into the system, let's create a job advert and think, do you know what, that took that 3 seconds. It would have taken us about half hour to try and bring that information through. So it's about working smarter, not harder sometimes. But again, you know, even things, you know, where they look, you can see straight away, it's like American English is what they're using. So it's about let's bring that back into, you know, our ways of working. So I think it's got merit and it's evolving faster than the speed of light, I think, to be honest with you. So it's, you know, it's quite frightening sometimes how that's evolving, but it is using it not so much, well, it is with caution, but it's just being sensible, it's applying that common sense that perhaps is lacking. So I think that's with, you know, with AI, I think it's going to be fantastic, particularly within our sort of sector and our profession. But again, it is just that let's use it sensibly, let's not sort of discriminate against anyone who is using it, but think, well, if they've used the initiative and they've, you know, explored further, well, for me, that's a positive and it gives that candidate a bit of edge.
Yeah, I love that. I think the common sense and also the how do you bring your organization, your values, you know, how do you bring that forward without having to start, as you say, from scratch? Or I don't, and something I did recently with a client where they were looking at really quite tired old job descriptions, which they've been using for a number of years, and they've been recruiting people using the same things. And obviously, they're all benchmarked and baselined, and they've been through all of the appropriate vetting and appropriate approvals to get them online. But just sort of re-inputting the same prompts that they might have used when they were writing those manually into Claude and asking Claude to kind of start again from scratch and just write it in a slightly different voice and a slightly fresher voice, gave them food for thought on how they could bring either some of that freshness, but also their own values and their own ambitions forward in some of the job descriptions they were putting out for people. It sort of changed the groups of people that they were applying. Gender biased language was a thing that it was able to kind of root out a little bit too, which is also a big thing, especially in the tech world where I'm a kind of embarrassing stalwart.
Yeah, I think it's so from my perspective, Jason, it's what colleagues have said. I mean, it's I think it's great to, and you can't actually. It's one of these things you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's out there. We've got to realise that actually it's there. Where we've what we don't like in terms of some of the applications where we've been sifting them is if it's quite clear it's a direct sort of cut and paste, if you like, from ChatGPT or Copilot or something, and you can usually tell in terms of the structure because often they do it in sort of bullet points or a particular sort of style, don't they? So those we potentially mark down those applicants if they're responding to sort of scenario-based questions and they're just but we recognise that people that are utilising it in a smart way, like Anne Howard says, yeah, that's fine. It's people, so long as they're using it to enhance their own skills, abilities, their own um, th- their own experience. That's absolutely fine. Got no problem with that.
Thank you. Georgina, go on.
I guess my concern is about losing the authenticity. So if you get a completely different candidate on paper, if you like, you then shortlist for interview, and then you meet someone, you're thinking, wow, the use of language is entirely different. And ultimately, in these leadership roles, we'd be pointing people to, you want an authentic leader. So that, I suppose that's my greatest concern, and how we kind of get the balance around that.
I agree.
I think
So
then
great answers.
isn't that down to though, Georgina, yeah, you're right, you might get caught out on occasions, but that's partly that's just bad luck. And then actually it's about the individual. Are they willing to sort of put themselves forward and set themselves up, because that's all they're doing, isn't it? If they utilize it in that way, and they usually quickly found out in terms of the interview process or interview stage. So I think it's just people. If they do that, they're just setting themselves up to fail potentially.
There's
Yeah.
just one comment I'd make on that is that actually it's more about augmented intelligence. So you've got artificial intelligence and you've got authentic intelligence. And if you combine both of them, then you end up with this augmented intelligence. So it's actually bringing together the best of both. So you don't have to split them. They don't have to be separate. If anything, they're going to become more and more combined. So I think it's more a mindset shift at looking at working smarter, as one of the people said earlier on, working smarter, but then keeping the human element, because actually the more AI scales, the more weight will be put on trust and authenticity. I'll give you a very quick example. My 19-year-old daughter, I started using ChatGPT, and I thought I'll write her a poem. So I wrote her a poem. I gave a few prompts. I said, make it funny, give me 3 verses. Bam, it was straight in. I sent it immediately to her on WhatsApp. She immediately replied with, did you write that? So I wrote back and I said, no, I ChatGPT'd it. And she said, I'm not reading it then. Now, that is from a 19-year-old brought up in a digital world. And because it didn't come from the heart, she wouldn't read it. So if anything, as we become smarter and more productive with AI, the human element is going to become more important. So you really need to, in my view, bring them together in the right way.
I think Evelyn, you're absolutely spot on, and actually that talks to Nikki's point from earlier. So Nikki in the chat has made a point of saying that I'm interested in the AI recruitment landscape and how AI supports recruiters rather than replaces them. That's exactly how, isn't it? It's the human connection. And really understanding how people deliver, what they have achieved, you know, what outcomes they've delivered. That's the bit that doesn't always come through on paper, as well as it does through human interaction.
If anything, it's going to make it more of a vital role being a recruiter.
Yeah.
100%. I love the authenticity angle, Evelyn, and the from the heart stuff. I think it's as a recruit, as a commissioner of a role, a line manager or a hiring manager or a role, that's the one thing that you want to come through more than anything else, isn't it? It's the kind of, how do I convey, or how do I receive and understand what the organization is looking for from this person? How do I help that person put their best, person forward, bring themselves to the role, bring themselves to the interview, and then Georgina not turn up and say something completely different from what you said in your application letter, but also recognizing that they might have had to do a bit of help in order to be able to get them there. It's great. Nikki, you popped up on camera. Was that because you wanted to say something as well? We can't hear you, or it might just be me that can't hear you. Is your microphone setting special?
Nikki.
Oh no. Drop it into chat. We'll pick it up. Right, Steve's moving me on because he's very clever. Thank you, Steve. What time have we got until? Remind me.
About 1, isn't it?
About 1. Okay, right. We'll definitely finish before 1. Don't you worry. Good. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go on to the second part of the conversation, which is about you. And I think this is a perfect segue from what Evelyn was just saying about how do you as recruiters make the most of this. Full disclosure, obviously I'm not a recruiter. I'm not somebody that works in the HR industry. I'm a person who is one of the people that really is very grateful that you're here, because you're all the people that help me hire brilliant teams when we need to get diverse and multidisciplinary brains together around brilliant and challenging problems in the public sector. So I'm not going to tell you what the answer is because I don't know it. You will far do better than that than I do. Words in right order in sentence, Jason. But I think there are 3 things around, and I think you've all touched on these already, which is brilliant. There's the questions around uncertainty. There's a certain level of value in the value exchange with recruits and with the rest of the organisation around you, and then you as leaders. And I want to just kind of touch quickly on each of those. Then again, we'll open it back up for a bit of a discussion. The first thing is a shameless plug. So in terms of surfacing the uncertainty from across the public sector particularly, but also wider, Sunita's organisation, Starfish, and her colleagues have put together. Nikki, we can now hear you, which is great. Well done. We're definitely going to come back to you in the next bit, which is good. I'm really glad the microphone's working. Sunita's organisation, I think, Sunita, you're involved in this, which is really very good, and others in your team have put together this thing, Control Alt Lead, where they asked hundreds, I would imagine, right, of public sector leaders to feedback on what they thought AI was going to do for them in their worlds. And it's a really good read. So if you go to starfishsearch.com, it kind of pops up at you. You can't really get away from it. It's quite aggressive. Well done. Good SEO. It's a really telling summary of some of the things that we're all nervous about. And it's kind of, for me, it's reassuring because it says people across all sectors in all different roles are struggling with this sort of stuff. And it's full of good quotes. And the great thing when you're giving a talk on AI now is that you can just go to this organizational oracle of quotes of the things that people have said, and you can say these people have said this. So it's not just us, we're not alone. So by all means, please do this inside your own organizations too. None of us knows where AI is going to lead us, and we'd be lying if we did. It feels like the genie is out of the bottle, and it's not quite clear at present who will be controlling who. And I think that, to a certain extent, I don't know who said this, it's one of the wonderful, wonderful leaders on Starfish's wonderful mailing list. It is absolutely on. It's really quite scary. And this, to me, talks about the uncertainty of the future as somebody in the job market, as somebody who's recruiting and hiring teams, as somebody who's that responsible person for kind of navigating authenticity and trust and values. There's a lot to contend with in that space. And there's a really, really, I mean, we can talk about the details of this, and I won't, but there's a really good academic article on this by a chap called Nicholas Carlini called Machines of Ruthless Efficiency, which was published earlier this year. And it talks about a whole range of perfectly believable Black Mirror style situations, which current AI has the capability to do if we let it run amok. And that's why I, as somebody who's been working on this for a while, is quite scared of what the opportunities might be for this for the future. The biggest things for me being around concentration of power and wealth, which we're starting to see, obviously, in the way that the States is imploding this week, which is quite amusing. People don't really know what AI means for themselves, their teams, their organizations. I think a couple of you have mentioned this. It's kind of like, how do you help your organization navigate through this? How do you make sure that the right people are turning up with the right attitudes and the right approaches, and you're bringing the right people in with the right values? I think that's crucial. Will we retain those elements that make us feel like a human society? This goes right to that empathy and authenticity point. Do we risk getting lost more to technology as phones, as social media have done to us? And that is obviously a really good reminder that this isn't the first rodeo, and all of you mentioned this, I'm sure, in recent conversations around this, and it's what we were talking about in terms of the book and the Google and the Clippy before. There's a great model of how organizations provide value, especially public sector organizations, where it's not always measured in money, to their audiences and their users by the brilliant Kate Tarling. And if you haven't come across her before, I'd absolutely encourage you to go and read her book or find her website. And it's obviously a kind of a value exchange from people at the top down to information that you hold about them in the bottom. And there's a real big question about where we as service organizations who are providing services to the public, to communities, to citizens, to organisations, and to the outside world who desperately need us, fit in this, because there's a gap. There are people who are every day picking up their phones, and as Google is relentlessly advertising to us on the TV at the moment, start using Gemini on their phone to fix their gochujang pasta, which is an advert I seem to get about 1,000 times a day every time I watch YouTube. If anyone's come across that, don't make gochujang cookies, they're horrible. If you've got an Apple phone, you're probably sitting there thinking, I would love to have AI, but Siri's really infuriating and she never really knows what I'm talking about, and I have to say things 3 times. So that's clearly not quite working yet. At the other end, and I think it was Angarad, I think you mentioned this, there are tools that our teams are using inside our organizations in very specialist ways. And I've picked out ones for tech, but there's obviously a whole gamut of tools for creatives, and obviously also for people who are running organizations operationally, which to the human user, to those on the outside of this world, probably are absolute gobbledygook. So my dev teams will use ChatGPT in collaboration with Perplexity, Jules, Firebase, and Stitch in order to identify a problem, think about the way it might be structured, and then produce a prototype, sometimes within minutes, just to be able to go, is this right? And it's totally changing the way that we work within our organizations. We've got examples of civil servants putting on LinkedIn, the wonderful James Ansell, who works in the national security world, from the Cabinet Office, putting on LinkedIn brilliant visualizations of how complex it is to build policy in an ever-changing and very fractured world, about how one thing might impact another and another and another. And it's those sorts of big brainy complexities that AI can help us navigate through. And it's also things that can really hamper people in their roles in terms of thinking about how they get into creative work, or how they, make films or poems which are authentic. So there's a really interesting disconnect at the moment between those people who have access to the tools, those people who are using them in their work, and then also the things that we are having in our daily lives and the way those kind of things are interacting with us, and the gap in between for us organizations to think about how AI changes the way we might work in the future. There are things that people, back to Control Alt Lead, there are things that people have talked about which are already happening. We will see major advances in science and medicine. Of course we will. This is the website of Brainomics, which is an organization which supports the NHS and has produced a stroke AI tool. So a person turning up in A&E who might or might not have symptoms of stroke, we can have a far faster and far more accurate analysis of that. It's going to save thousands of lives over the next few days, weeks, and months. We'll come back to that one because that's quite complicated. We've got people who are really excited about the opportunities we talked about before, about closing the digital divide, for people who need medical advice, who need legal advice. And there's some really interesting work going on within the NHS at the moment around people who don't even know how to turn up to a doctor's and how to ask for the right things to help them navigate through the care system. And you've got organisations like AVA, conflict of interest definitely declared. I'm an advisor to them at the moment. They're an amazing organisation who are just producing a chatbot which can be dropped into local authority sites to say, are you looking for some advice on a problem that you're having with your social care? And it can produce letters that can go to lawyers. It can produce guidance on how to approach your doctor. It's very sympathetic. The language, the tone is exactly what you and I would expect and hope for somebody who is navigating a really traumatic and challenging situation. And then probably the one that's most interesting to us as recruiters and people looking to grow and diversify our workforce, we have a generation of people who are advancing ahead of the education and experience of their employers. No shit, Sherlock. 19-year-olds not reading things because they're not authentic, or creating games in their spare time in their bedrooms. Like, this is happening all the time, and we're all rather excited about it. And the corollary of that how do you bring out some of those soft skills that all of us have and all of us hope for in our work lives, around curiosity and around ambition and creativity, in ways that might get hidden in the standard process of, we read a cover letter, we take somebody in for an interview, and we give them a job based on the description that we've given out. How might we disrupt that entire process to be able to enable more people to turn up and for us to take leadership responsibilities? And there's something about you as people who are in the driving seat and with big responsibilities in this space, about how possibly at the tipping point when we start to hear words like diversity become negative in certain workplaces, how we continue to champion those responsibilities and those opportunities. How do we enable those directors and executives around us to continue to be humble and not to, race to the bottom, and use some of these tools to open and increase the range of people who can apply for roles, and the things that they can bring to us, and the nuance that we might see between the words, that actually that is going to be an interesting candidate, we should bring them to interview, and all of those sorts of things. And then it gets a bit existential as you read through the Control Alt Lead book, but I definitely think you should read it. How do we create space with a range of human views so that while we fumble together towards evidence and experiments of what might say work to save the planet, we can keep open minds and ears to unexpected alternatives? Bit heavy for a Friday lunchtime. Anyway, let me finish with something that's a little bit reassuring and hopefully speaks to the creatives amongst us. There is another corner of the internet, a little bit like the Pessimist's Archive, which I have been a fan of since, get this, 2001. Internets were around in 2001. Who even remembers that? It's the Half Bakery. It's the home for half-baked ideas on the internet. And it is a mine of incredibly stupid things which we as humans, and only we as humans, could have thought up. Custard-filled speed bumps is their number one thing. You're driving along, you're going too fast. We all know that custard, when you stick your spoon into it, it goes a bit hard. So you're going to drive along too fast, the custard-filled speed bump is going to be really heavy and lumpy. You drive along nice and slowly and it just goes squish. Why has this not become a thing in the world? Multi-species face mask. Why did cats not have face masks during COVID? That was a massively missed opportunity for a face mask company. Parable, I don't even know what a parabolic tool table is. But listen, there are loads of places in the world, thank goodness, where humans can be safe from AI if we want to be in hideaway, but also loads of opportunities for us to kind of, as I think, Evelyn, you said it, come together around that kind of authentic and also augmented view of how we might use our brains. And that's really, for me, very exciting. And also, as Stephen Sondheim said in Into the Woods, a little bit scary too. So here's discussion 2. We've got 5 or 10 minutes left. What are the implications for you as a recruiter? How do you want to lead your organizations, and how can you start to open their minds to some of the ways in which we can use this as a more creative tool and not just be worried about it as a kind of bit of fly in the ointment or grit in the oyster? And what do you want and need to thrive? What are the tools, the ways of working? What are the expectations and the hopes that you have for your industry? I'm going to be incredibly shameless because I'm one of those people who is, although a Ned at the moment and doing some fun, fantastic things with the NHS, definitely looking for my next fun gig. So that's my LinkedIn on the QR, but also Sunita's email and Charlotte's email as well, in case you want to get in contact to follow up with anything after this. But who would like to kick us off? What are the implications for you as a recruiter? How do you want to navigate through this? What are the exciting things that you're looking forward to? And Nikki, you get first gig at this if you want to, since we lost you last time round, and you can also bring back your thoughts and comments from the first one as well, if that's a good way to kind of bring us a segue from the first and second.
Thank you. No, I've had problems with the camera and the mic all morning and it keeps coming and going, so apologies if it goes again. In the first session, I was just going to say that something that we experimented with not so long ago was we had 36 applicants for a particular role, and we shortlisted the way that we normally do, and then just as a test we input those applications and asked Copilot to shortlist, and it came back with exactly the same 6 people, which was quite interesting. But I feel that I don't trust it, even though, so, we would have done a manual exercise, and I think, the more that happens, the more we may begin to trust it. But with regards to your discussion on number 2, I think working for a local authority where we have a lot of hiring managers, it's about how do we easily cascade this information about AI to them with a positive spin, because I do think it's helpful. But a lot of our managers are just, no, if they think it's an AI application, they're just not shortlisting, and it's trying to embed it into the organisation that actually we need to meet them halfway and find a compromise, really.
That's really, really insightful. That trust question is huge, isn't it? And I think it's something that I was hinting at with the whole kind of tone of even different government departments with the same background guidance, trying to attack it in slightly different ways. And I think we talked about it a little bit in terms of the kind of the tooling. I often find, Nikki, I don't know if this is any use, if you ask Copilot to do the same thing twice, it sometimes comes up with different answers, and that can be really challenging. And it's one of the ways then learning how to kind of prompt it well. What are the things you're looking for, and how, which I'm sure you're doing really well already, can be a really telling. Is this a useful way? Is this a useful thing to use at this stage? Is this a useful thing to use at a slightly different stage? Might it be able to wheedle things out for us? But I've also used it to try and make sure that I haven't accidentally discounted people who might not have written a brilliant cover letter, formulaically or in brilliant grammar or any of those sorts of things, but who might still be potentially interesting to read again. So that can be useful. What are other people thinking about your implications, how you want to lead through this? Nikki, you're right, that kind of, how do you get it down to the rest of your organization? How do you get them to come on the journey with you? What are the sorts of challenges that you're having around your organizations at the moment? And if no one comes forward, I might ask Sunita to talk a little bit about how Starfish are reflecting on this at the moment as well. But go on, Steve, you're about to say something.
Well, I was just going to say that I think for me it's a lot of people are sort of, as you said at the very beginning, sort of fumbling, sort of trying to understand and utilize it in the right way and sort of embrace it in the right way. I think that the discussions that we've had so far is about people being open to learning, utilizing the tools at our disposal. But I think it's more about the purpose of this webinar and more of this in terms of sort of just sharing stories, sharing experience, because we're all trying to start to use these different tools. Nikki's example there, great example in terms of actually how you might use it. Things like that. I think it's about sharing with the networks that we have. So PPMA, we've got networks. Just talking to colleagues and utilising the networks that we've already got in terms of sharing our experiences of utilising AI in a positive way. So as we've said, don't think about it as a negative, use it as positively, but share more.
Oh, I love that. And we still have space and time here if people want to ask what they think are silly questions, but definitely aren't silly questions.
And I suppose the other thing worth saying is that if you didn't want to ask it here, you can still ask the question, put it in the chat. We can come back to you afterwards as well. If everyone's feeling a bit shy, that's totally fine. Oh, we've got a few coming in on the chat, but some people having to go.
Thank you, Stephanie. Mandy, do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, I was waiting for Steve to mention something actually, but I just got an email through this morning, and there's about half a dozen London councils have been on a working party through London councils, looking at wording to use for when people are applying using AI. I've not read it in any detail because it only came through this morning, but yeah, so it looks as if London councils, various councils within London are doing work advising people how to use AI to apply for jobs.
Great. Sorry, Mandy, that's news to me as well. So
yeah, I did wonder. Yeah,
I'll have to find that.
Yeah, Debbie sent something out this morning.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. Yeah, my colleague
Yeah.
Debbie, I'll look at that then.
Yeah.
Been tied up with other things, sorry.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think that's really powerful, because I think there's challenge if we as individuals or organizations have to try and navigate this ourselves, don't we? It's what Steve said is right, that if there are ways to come to this together, and Lottie and Eddie Copeland and Theo have been doing some really, really interesting work around the kind of like, what's the tooling that London councils should be able to have behind the scenes, and what's trusted and trustworthy. But if that starts to navigate itself into guidance for you as professionals and leaders as well, that's really, really, really helpful. Rosemary's right. We are all seeing applications that look like being created with AI, especially have people, and I think Stephanie mentioned this just before she had to run off as well. Are people seeing the same things coming through? We talked about it a little bit earlier as well.
Yeah.
But the kind of Stephanie's point I thought was really interesting in the chat. I don't know whether anyone else wants to kind of come in on this as well, which was around how do you major on experiences and values? And I think that speaks right back to what Evelyn, Angrad and Nikki, you were saying a little earlier as well. Go on, Stephen. Tell us more about what you just put in the chat, because I think that's a really, really interesting observation.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, I just think what we're currently doing is applying AI to how we've always done recruitment, and I think AI has the possibility to change that up completely. I think what we're all talking about with authenticity is the need to see the person, understand the person's values, beliefs. Do they fit with our organisation? You'll never get that from the written word. You never have done. So I think potentially we could shift our practice more towards how do we see and hear from people, as opposed to receiving a written application form as the first introduction from them.
I love that. How do others people feel about that? Sounds like more work for you.
I think that's interesting, only because I was talking to somebody, a recruitment company earlier this week, and they actually asked people to send in a 5-minute video before their CV.
Yeah.
So they actually wanted to see who they were, how their animation of themselves, their values, and how they felt they were relevant for the role. And they looked at the videos before they then went back to the written word. That was actually a job in Dubai. So I don't know if they're doing things differently.
We've done video applications for some leadership roles, some of the more senior ones like chief executive level, and they are really, really good. They do create a lot of work, though. I think the technology perhaps isn't ready for that. It might get there. I think it probably will get there, but it does create a lot more work. But they're really interesting and do give you more of a sense of the person than you get from a paper. Absolutely.
I think it's a really interesting thought. Kim, you're absolutely right. My first thought goes to how, and I think Steve, I'm sure you weren't thinking of that as the golden bullet for everything. I think it was a really good example of how do we pivot the process that we've got used to over the last few years about this: write a cover letter, send us a CV, a process, and the opportunity for creativity it might enable us to bring into the whole process by having more tools at our disposal and theirs as well.
Yeah, I just can't see recruitment as it's been for the last 20, 30 plus years being the same with the introduction of AI. It has to change it completely from my point of view, and that has to focus on the person as opposed to what someone could create using AI in terms of the written word.
Well, that feels to me like a very good challenge and ambitious place to jump off with, not least because people are having to run away for their 1 o'clocks, or more importantly, even their lunch. Steve, do you want to say anything to finish with? And Sunita, is there anything else you want to add to us before we go?
Oh, Steve, I'll let Steve.
No. It's nothing more for me really. It's great to see so many people on this call. Thank you, Jason, for talking through this subject. Some really thought-provoking discussion there, and thank you, Sunita, as well, for helping to facilitate and get Jason in to do this for us. Yeah, I think there's some really good points, and I think it's more about continuing to learn, and as we said,
Talking about
sort of
it,
share
yeah.
more information, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great place to share and learn from each other, and I think we just need to keep doing it, because things don't stay the same, do they? So we can just keep learning from each other. And thank you everybody for joining us as well.
Thank you for a great discussion.